The December wind howled through the Wyoming mountains like a wounded beast, carrying with it the promise of another brutal storm. Snow lay thick upon the ground, 3 feet deep in places where the wind hadn't scoured it away, and the pine forests stretched endlessly into the gray horizon, their branches heavy with ice that glittered like broken glass when the weak sun managed to pierce the clouds. Eliza Hartley pressed a damp cloth to her son's burning forehead, her hands trembling not from the cold that seeped through the thin walls of their cabin, but from fear. Samuel's cough had worsened through the night, each ragged breath tearing at her heart. The boy, just 7 years old, lay still as death save for the shallow rise and fall of his small chest. "Mama?" His voice came as barely a whisper. "I'm here, my love." She forced a smile, though tears threatened. "Rest now." The mining town of Copper Creek had seen better days. Once bustling with the promise of fortune, it now clung to the mountainside like a stubborn weed, its inhabitants as harsh and unforgiving as the landscape. For a widow like Eliza, barely 28 and still bearing the beauty that had once caught her late husband's eye, life here meant constant scrutiny and whispered accusations. She'd already been to McCready's general store that morning, only to find the shelves nearly bare. The old Scot had shaken his head grimly. "No supply wagons getting through, Mrs. Hartley. This winter's locked us in tight as a tomb. But surely there must be something. Medicine, willow bark, anything?" "Nothing that'll help the boy. Doc Morrison went to Denver 2 weeks back. Doubt he'll return before spring thaw. If the consumption don't take him first." The consumption. The word had frozen her blood. She'd seen what that disease could do, had watched her own mother waste away when she was barely older than Samuel. Now, as another day bled into evening, desperation clawed at her chest. The few neighbors who might have helped turned their faces away when she passed. They blamed her for her husband's death in the mine collapse 2 years prior, said she'd brought ill fortune with her Eastern ways and book learning. Superstitious fools. But their herbs and remedies stayed locked behind their doors just the same. It was old Mary Two Crows, the Shoshone woman who sold beadwork at the edge of town, who finally offered a glimmer of hope. "There's a man lives up the mountain," she'd said, her weathered face grave. "Nathan Cross, used to hunt for the cavalry. They say, knows the old medicine, herbs and such, but he don't come to town no more, not for years." "Where?" "Follow Elk Creek till it forks, then bear north. His cabin sits below Devil's Crown, where the avalanche scarred the mountain. But Mrs. Hartley—" The old woman had gripped her arm with surprising strength. "They say he's dangerous." "A killer, some claim. The kind of man decent folk cross the street to avoid." Decent folk? Eliza almost laughed at that. The same decent folk who'd let her son die rather than share their medicine? She looked down at Samuel now, at the fever flush on his pale cheeks, and made her decision. Danger be damned. She'd face the devil himself if it meant saving her boy. The preparations took precious little time. She had so little to prepare. Into an old canvas pack went what food she could spare. Hard biscuits, dried beef, a precious tin of peaches she'd been saving, her husband's Navy Colt revolver, heavy and awkward in her small hands. Went into her coat pocket along with a dozen cartridges. She dressed Samuel in every warm thing he owned, wrapping him in the quilt her mother had made for her wedding day. "Where we going, Mama?" he asked weakly as she lifted him. "To find help, sweetheart. To find medicine to make you well." Their horse, a sturdy mare named Bess, stood patient as Eliza struggled to mount while holding Samuel. The boy weighed so little now, seemed to grow lighter each day as the sickness consumed him. She settled him in front of her, wrapped in her arms, and turned Bess toward the mountains. The town fell away behind them, its few lit windows like dying embers in the gathering dusk. The road, if the narrow track could be called such, wound upward through stands of lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. Snow began to fall, fat flakes that clung to her eyelashes and melted on Samuel's fevered skin. An hour out, she passed the last miner's shack, abandoned and listing to one side like a drunkard. Beyond lay only wilderness, the domain of elk and bear, wolf and mountain cat. The forest pressed close, branches reaching across the trail like grasping fingers. In the distance, a wolf howled, answered by another, then another, until the mountains rang with their wild chorus. Samuel stirred, whimpering. His small body shook with chills despite the layers of wool and the warmth of her embrace. "Shh, little one, we're almost there," she lied, having no idea how much farther this Nathan Cross might live, or if he even existed outside of an old woman's tales. The trail grew steeper, winding between massive granite boulders that loomed like sentinels in the failing light. Bess picked her way carefully, sure-footed despite the snow, but Eliza could feel the mare's unease. The wolves had gone quiet, which somehow seemed worse than their howling. At the fork in the creek, she turned north as directed. The land here bore the scars of some ancient violence. Trees snapped like matchsticks. Boulders the size of houses tumbled down the slope. The avalanche Mary Two Crows had mentioned. Above it all rose Devil's Crown, a jagged peak that scraped the belly of the storm clouds. Night fell like a curtain, bringing with it a cold so fierce it stole her breath. The snow fell harder now, driven by a wind that cut through her coat like a blade. Samuel had gone quiet, too quiet, his breathing shallow and labored. Fear gnawed at her. What if she'd made a terrible mistake? What if this Nathan Cross was just a story? Or worse, what if the tales of his danger were true? She thought of the weight of the revolver in her pocket and wondered if she'd have the courage to use it if needed. But what choice did she have? Behind lay certain death for her son. Ahead lay only uncertainty, but with it, hope. The trail disappeared beneath the snow. Bess struggled now, breathing hard, steam rising from her flanks. They were lost, Eliza realized with a sick certainty, lost in a blizzard on a mountainside with a dying child in her arms. Then, through the swirling white, she saw it, a faint glow, barely visible through the trees. Light, warmth, salvation or damnation. She no longer cared which. "Hold on, Samuel," she whispered against his hair. "Hold on just a little longer." She urged Bess toward the light, her heart hammering with hope and dread in equal measure. Whatever waited in that cabin, whatever price she'd have to pay, she would pay it gladly. For her son, she would pay any price at all. The storm struck with the fury of a wounded grizzly. One moment Eliza could see the light ahead. The next the world disappeared into a white wall of wind and snow. Bess stumbled, whinnying in terror as her hooves found no purchase on the ice-slicked rocks beneath the fresh powder. "Easy, girl, easy." Eliza clutched Samuel tighter with one arm while trying to control the reins with the other. The wind screamed through the pines, bending ancient trees nearly to breaking. Snow drove horizontal, stinging her face like 1,000 needles. Bess took another step, and the ground simply wasn't there. The mare's front legs plunged through a drift into a hidden ravine, throwing Eliza and Samuel from the saddle. Eliza hit the ground hard, her body instinctively curling around her son to shield him from the impact. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she held tight to Samuel, rolling with him away from Bess's thrashing hooves. The mare struggled free, eyes rolling white with panic, and before Eliza could grab the reins, disappeared into the storm. Their supplies, their only means of escape, gone. "Mama!" Samuel's cry was barely audible above the wind. His small body convulsed with coughs, each one weaker than the last. Eliza struggled to her feet, lifting her son despite the fire in her shoulder. The light, she had to find that light again, but the world had become a spinning chaos of white. She stumbled forward, then left, then right, completely disoriented. The cold was a living thing now, creeping through her clothes, numbing her fingers, clouding her thoughts. Samuel went limp in her arms. "No!" She shook him gently. "Samuel, stay with me! Please, God, not my boy!" A faint response, barely a whisper of breath against her neck. Still alive. But for how much longer? She pushed forward, no longer sure if she was heading toward the light or away from it. Her skirts tangled in unseen branches. She fell, struggled up, fell again, the second time. She couldn't find the strength to rise. The snow was so soft, so inviting. It would be easy to just lie here, to let the white blanket cover them both. A shadow loomed out of the storm. Eliza's numb fingers fumbled for the revolver, but she couldn't feel it, couldn't grasp it. The shadow resolved into the shape of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, moving through the blizzard as if it were a summer breeze. "Please," she managed through chattering teeth. "My son." Strong arms lifted Samuel from her grasp. She tried to protest, tried to hold on, but her strength had fled. The man said something, words lost in the wind. Then those same arms were lifting her, carrying her as easily as she'd carried Samuel. Warmth hit her like a physical blow. The sudden absence of wind left her ears ringing. Firelight danced across rough-hewn walls, and the blessed smell of wood smoke filled her nostrils. She found herself deposited on a thick bearskin rug before a stone fireplace. Samuel lay gently beside her. "The boy first," a deep voice commanded. Eliza forced her eyes to focus on the man who'd saved them. Nathan Cross, for who else could it be, was not what she'd expected. She'd imagined someone grizzled and ancient, weathered by years of isolation. But the man kneeling beside Samuel couldn't be more than 35, with dark hair that fell past his collar and a full beard that couldn't quite hide the strong line of his jaw. His clothes were simple but well made. Buckskin trousers, a wool shirt, elk-hide boots that reached his knees. It was his eyes that held her, gray as the storm outside, but not cold. Intense, yes, wary, certainly. But as he examined Samuel with surprisingly gentle hands, she saw something else there. Concern, compassion. "How long has he been like this?" His voice rumbled like distant thunder. 3 days. The cough started a week ago, but the fever." She struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. "Please, I know you don't know us, but he's all I have. I'll do anything, pay anything." "Be still." He didn't look at her. His attention focused entirely on Samuel. "Save your bargaining. The boy needs help, not haggling." He lifted Samuel with infinite care, carrying him to a narrow bed in the corner. Eliza tried to follow, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She watched, helpless, as Nathan stripped away the wet clothing. His movements efficient but tender. He paused at the sight of Samuel's thin frame, the way his ribs showed with each labored breath, and she saw his jaw tighten. When did he last eat? Yesterday morning. Some broth. He couldn't keep it down. Nathan nodded, moving to a shelf lined with jars and bottles. His hands moved with practiced sureness, selecting this, discarding that. He ground something with a mortar and pestle, mixed it with water from a kettle hanging by the fire. "Willow bark for the fever," he explained without looking at her. "Colt's foot and mullein for his lungs. Should have had it days ago." The criticism stung, but she couldn't argue. Should have, would have, if only she could have. Nathan returned to Samuel, lifting the boy's head and coaxing the medicine between his lips. Most dribbled down his chin, but some went down. Nathan cleaned the boy's face with a cloth, then covered him with a thick wool blanket. Only then did he turn to her. "Your turn. I'm fine. You're half frozen and that shoulder's damaged. Don't be foolish." He approached and she tensed, acutely aware of her vulnerability. A stranger's cabin, miles from anywhere. No one knowing where she'd gone. But his touch, when he helped her out of her sodden coat, was impersonal, clinical. He tisked at the bruise already forming on her shoulder. "Dislocated," he diagnosed. "This will hurt." Before she could respond, he grasped her arm and gave a quick, precise pull. Pain flashed white-hot, then faded to a dull ache. She bit her lip to keep from crying out, not wanting to disturb Samuel. "You're Eliza Hartley." It wasn't a question. She blinked in surprise. "You know me?" "Know of you. Widow woman from town. Husband died in the mine." He moved to pour something from a pot on the fire. "Here, drink." The liquid was hot and bitter, but she drank it gratefully. "How do you—" "I may live apart, but I'm not deaf. Trappers talk. Hunters gossip worse than old women." He pulled a chair near the fire, studying her with those storm-gray eyes. They say other things, too. Say you brought ill fortune to your man. Say you've got the evil eye. Her chin lifted despite her exhaustion. And what do you say? The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. I say people are fools who'd rather blame a pretty widow than admit their own mistakes caused that mind collapse. The unexpected defense left her speechless. He rose, moving to check on Samuel again. The storm won't break tonight, he said. Maybe not tomorrow either. You'll stay till it does and the boy's well enough to travel. Thank you. I know this is an imposition. It's not. His back was to her, but she heard something in his voice, quickly suppressed. Been a long time since anyone needed my help, longer still since I gave it. She thought of the stories, the warnings. They say you're dangerous. He turned then, and for a moment she glimpsed something raw in his expression before the stoic mask returned. They say a lot of things. Question is, do you believe them? Eliza looked at her son, sleeping now, his breathing easier than it had been in days. Then she looked back at the man who'd carried them through a killing storm, who'd asked for nothing before helping, who touched her child with more gentleness than she'd seen from any of the decent folk in town. No, she said simply. I don't. Something shifted in the cabin's atmosphere. The wind still howled outside, but inside felt suddenly warmer, safer. Nathan busied himself at the stove, and soon the smell of cooking meat filled the air. Venison stew, her stomach told her, and her mouth watered. You'll need to keep your strength up, he said, ladling stew into a bowl. The boy will need you when he wakes. As she ate, Eliza studied the cabin. It was larger than it had seemed at first, well built and surprisingly neat. Books lined one wall, proper books, not just almanacs and Bibles. Tools hung in ordered rows. Everything spoke of a man who valued solitude but not squalor. You weren't always a hermit, she observed. He paused in cleaning his rifle. No, I wasn't. She waited, but he offered nothing more. The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable but not hostile either. Outside, wolves howled. Closer now, drawn perhaps by the scent of horses or the promise of prey made weak by the storm. Nathan's head came up, alert. He set the rifle aside and picked up something else. A bow, she realized, and a quiver of arrows. Stay inside, he ordered, and was gone into the storm before she could respond. She heard nothing over the wind, but her imagination supplied plenty. When he returned sometime later, snow dusting his shoulders, she noticed dark stains on his hands that he was quick to wash away. Wolves? She asked. Not anymore. He said it matter-of-factly, but she shivered. Here was the dangerous man the town spoke of, yet the same hands that had dealt death to the wolves had tenderly ministered to her son. You should sleep, he said. I'll watch the boy. I couldn't. You can and will. No good to him exhausted. He gestured to a second bed against the far wall. It's clean. You're safe here. Safe. Such a simple word. But it nearly undid her. When had she last felt safe? Not since James died. Certainly, maybe not even then. She rose unsteadily, exhaustion hitting her like a physical weight. At the bed, she paused, looking back at him. He'd pulled his chair beside Samuel's bed, the rifle across his knees, every line of his body promising protection. Nathan, she said softly, why did you come out into the storm? You could have stayed warm inside, never known we were out there. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so low she almost missed it. I heard you calling for your boy. No one should lose a child to the mountain. No one. There was a story there, pain wrapped in those simple words. But she was too tired to pursue it. She lay down fully clothed, pulling a soft blanket over herself. Her last sight before sleep claimed her was Nathan Cross, the dangerous hermit, the killer, gently placing a cool cloth on her son's forehead while the storm raged on outside. Eliza woke to the sound of Samuel's laughter, weak but genuine, and for a moment thought she must be dreaming. Golden morning light filtered through the cabin's single window, the storm having blown itself out sometime in the night. She found her son sitting up in bed, sipping from a cup while Nathan showed him how to tie a special knot in a piece of rawhide. "Mama?" Samuel's face lit up when he saw her. Color had returned to his cheeks, and though he still looked fragile, the terrible wheeze in his breathing had lessened. "Easy there, young man," Nathan cautioned as the boy tried to scramble up. "You've got a ways to go yet before you're racing around." Eliza crossed the room quickly, pressing her hand to Samuel's forehead. Cooler. Not completely well, but so much better than the burning fever of yesterday. Tears of relief threatened, but she blinked them back. The medicine worked fast, she said. Nathan shrugged, busying himself with putting away the rawhide. "Mountain herbs are strong when you know how to use them. He'll need more doses through the day, and rest. Lots of it. But he's through the worst. I can't thank you enough. No need." He cut her off, clearly uncomfortable with gratitude. "Coffee's hot if you want it. There's biscuits and honey, too." As she ate, Eliza watched Nathan move about the cabin, noting how he seemed to fill the space without making it feel small. He prepared another dose of medicine for Samuel, checked the fire, cleaned already clean surfaces. A man unaccustomed to company, she realized, and unsure what to do with it. "Mr. Cross," she began. "Nathan, just Nathan. Nathan, then the town. They told me you were a killer." His hands stilled in their work. Samuel had dozed off again, and Nathan moved to sit across from her at the rough wooden table. "I've killed," he said simply. "That makes me a killer in most folks' eyes. But there's more to it than that." He studied her, and she had the feeling she was being weighed, measured. Finally. He nodded. "I was a bounty hunter. Started when I was barely older than your boy is now. My PA was murdered by claim jumpers, and I went after them. Found I had a talent for tracking, for dealing with bad men." He rubbed a hand over his face. "Made a reputation, made money, made enemies. What happened? Town called Bent Creek, up Colorado way. I was tracking 3 men who'd robbed a bank, killed a teller, followed them for 2 weeks. Finally caught up at a ranch outside town. There was shooting. I got all 3, but..." He paused, lost in memory. "The ranch belonged to a widow. She was hiding them. See, one was her brother. In the gunfight, a lantern got knocked over. Fire spread fast. Too fast. The woman's daughter was in the barn loft. Couldn't have been more than 16? Eliza's heart clenched. "She didn't make it out?" "No. I tried. God knows I tried. But the smoke, the flames. I can still hear her screaming." His voice had gone rough. "Town turned on me. Said I'd murdered an innocent girl. Maybe they were right. I'd brought death to that place. Sure enough. It was an accident. Doesn't matter to the dead, does it?" He stood abruptly, moving to the window. "Left that life behind. Came here, built this place. Figured if I stayed away from people, I couldn't bring them any more grief. But you saved us." He turned back to her, and she saw surprise in his eyes, as if he hadn't considered it that way. "You could have let us die in the storm," she continued. "No one would have known. Instead, you risked yourself to bring us in. That's not the act of a killer. You don't know me, Mrs. Hartley. Eliza, and I know enough. I know you've been gentler with my son than any doctor. I know you gave us shelter without asking for anything in return. I know you went out into a blizzard to fight off wolves that threatened us." They stared at each other across the cabin, and something electric passed between them. Nathan looked away first. "The town treats you poorly," he said, changing the subject. "Why stay?" Now it was her turn to feel exposed. "Where else would I go? I have no family back east. They disowned me when I married James, said a miner was beneath our station." She laughed bitterly, as if being a shopkeeper's daughter in Boston was so grand. And after James died, the mine owner made sure everyone knew the collapse was due to following improper procedures. My husband's fault. In other words, no compensation, no help, just whispers and turned backs. So they blame you for their own guilt. Something like that. They need someone to carry their sins. I suppose. The preacher says I tempted James from the righteous path with my books and Eastern ways. The miners' wives say I'm bad luck, that I cursed him somehow. Easier than admitting the mine owner cut corners on support beams to save money. Nathan's face darkened. Harrison still owns that mine. You know him? We've crossed paths. Something in his tone suggested those encounters hadn't been pleasant. Man's a snake, owns half the territory through blood and threats, and the other half lives in fear of him. Eliza added, including me. He's made offers on our cabin, generous offers. He calls them, though they're half what the land's worth. So far I've refused, but he's not a man who takes no for an answer. She nodded, suddenly exhausted again. The weight of her situation crashed back down. Even if Samuel recovered, what then? Back to a town that despised her, to the constant struggle to survive, to Harrison's increasingly aggressive attempts to drive her out? I'm sorry, she said. Here you've given us shelter and I'm burdening you with my troubles. It's no burden. His voice was gruff. Been a long time since I had anyone to talk to besides the horses. Speaking of horses, Bess, I lost her in the storm. Found her this morning. She'd taken shelter in a grove downslope. She's in my stable now, eating her weight in oats and none the worse for wear. Relief washed over her. Without Bess, getting home would have been nearly impossible. Home. The word sat heavy in her chest. You're thinking of leaving, Nathan observed. Not back to town, somewhere else. Was she that transparent? I've thought about it. California, maybe, or Oregon. Somewhere we could start fresh. But it takes money I don't have. And traveling alone with a child. She shrugged. The world's not kind to women on their own. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. Samuel stirred, coughing weakly. Both adults moved toward him, but Nathan gestured for her to go. She helped her son sit up, holding the cup of medicine to his lips. It tastes bad, Mama, he complained, but drank it anyway. I know, sweetheart, but it's making you better. Is Mr. Nathan a doctor? Something like that, she said, glancing at Nathan. He's teaching me knots, Samuel said proudly. Said when I'm better, he'll show me how to set a rabbit snare too. Did he now? Nathan cleared his throat. Boy should know how to provide for himself. World's hard enough without being helpless in it. There was something in the way he said it, in the way he looked at Samuel. A longing, perhaps, or an old grief. Eliza remembered his words from the night before. No one should lose a child to the mountain. Did you have children? She asked softly, when Samuel had settled back to sleep. No. The word came quick, sharp, then softer. Always figured I would someday. Had a woman once who, but that was before I became what I am. You're a good man, Nathan Cross. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're the first to say so in 5 years. Then others are fools. Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. The air between them grew thick, charged with possibility and danger. Eliza felt her cheeks warm and dropped her gaze, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance, her hair loose around her shoulders, her dress wrinkled from sleeping in it. Is there somewhere I could wash? There's a basin in the back room. I'll heat some water. As he busied himself with the kettle, Eliza tried to make sense of the feelings stirring in her chest. It had been 2 years since James died. 2 years of grief and struggle and loneliness so deep it ached. She'd thought that part of her, the part that could want, could yearn, had died with him. But here, in this cabin with this dangerous, gentle man, something was awakening. It frightened her more than the storm, more than the wolves, more than Harrison's threats. Because wanting something, someone, meant having something to lose. And she'd lost too much already. When Nathan brought her the water, their fingers brushed as she took the basin. The touch sent lightning through her, and she saw his pupils dilate. Knew he'd felt it too. Thank you, she whispered. Eliza. Her name on his lips was almost a caress. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, I'm not a man to offer false hope. I've got too much blood on my hands, too many ghosts following me. You deserve better than— Don't— She cut him off, surprising them both with her vehemence. Don't tell me what I deserve. Everyone in my life has decided that for me. My parents, the town, even James. God rest him. For once, I'd like to decide for myself. Nathan stared at her, something raw and hungry in his eyes. Then he stepped back, giving her space. The storm's passed, but the snow's too deep for travel. You'll need to stay at least another day or two, until it settles and I can clear a path. She nodded, clutching the basin. Another day or two. It felt like both a lifetime and no time at all. As she washed in the small back room, Eliza tried not to think about the way Nathan had looked at her, the way her name had sounded in his deep voice. Tried not to think about how safe she felt here, how right it seemed to be in this cabin with this man. Outside, the sun climbed higher, turning the snow-covered world into a glittering wonderland. But inside the cabin, warmed by more than just the fire, something else was beginning to shine, tentative and fragile as spring's first flower, but no less real for its delicacy. Hope, perhaps, or something even more dangerous. Something that might be worth risking everything for. Night fell like a shroud over the mountain, bringing with it a cold so fierce it made the cabin walls creak and groan. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the rough-hewn logs. Outside, wolves had returned, their mournful howls echoing through the pines like lost souls seeking warmth. Eliza sat beside Samuel's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. The medicine had worked wonders. His fever had broken completely, and though he remained weak, she could see him gaining strength with each passing hour. Nathan had shown her how to prepare the herbal mixture, his large hands surprisingly delicate as he measured and ground the dried plants. "You should eat something," Nathan said from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. The man moved like a ghost when he chose to. "I'm not hungry." Wasn't a suggestion. He set a plate beside her, venison stew again, but seasoned with wild herbs that made her mouth water despite herself. "Can't have you falling ill too." She took the plate, their fingers brushing again. That electric current, stronger each time they touched. "You're very kind, despite what you say about yourself." He settled into the chair across from her, his own plate balanced on his knee. "Kindness and I parted ways long ago." "I don't believe that." "Then you're a fool." The words were harsh, but his tone held no sting. They ate in silence for a moment, the only sounds the fire's whisper and the wind's moan. Samuel stirred, mumbling in his sleep, something about rabbits and snares. A ghost of a smile crossed Nathan's face. "He's a good boy," he said. "Smart, brave, coming up the mountain like that. He gets that from his father." Eliza replied automatically, then paused. "No, that's not true. James was many things, but brave wasn't one of them." Nathan raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, letting her continue if she chose. The darkness, the intimacy of the fire-lit cabin, made confession easier somehow. "He was a good man," she said carefully. "Gentle. He loved his books more than his pickaxe. Truth be told, used to read to me in the evenings, poetry mostly, Byron, Shelley." She smiled at the memory. The other miners mocked him for it, said he was soft, putting on airs. Maybe he was, but he was mine, and I loved him for it. But, how did he know there was a but? But he was weak too. When Harrison started pressuring him about the mine safety, threatening his job if he complained, James folded, kept quiet even though he knew those support beams were rotting, even though he came home every night talking about how dangerous it was getting. "You blame him for his own death?" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "No," she repeated more softly. "I blame Harrison. I blame the town for letting him get away with it. But sometimes, late at night when Samuel asks why his papa didn't come home, sometimes I wonder if things might have been different if James had been stronger, if he'd stood up to them. Standing up to men like Harrison usually ends one way. Nathan said quietly, "Your husband might have been wiser than you know." Wisdom didn't save him. Neither would foolish bravery. Men like Harrison own the law, own the guns, own the fear that keeps folks in line. Your James probably figured he could do more good alive and careful than dead and righteous. Eliza considered this. It was a more generous interpretation than she'd allowed herself in her darkest moments. "You sound like you speak from experience." Nathan's jaw tightened. "I've known my share of Harrisons. Put a few in the ground, back in my hunting days. But there's always another one waiting to take their place. Evil's like a weed. You can cut it down, but unless you get the root..." A particularly loud howl interrupted him. Closer than before. Nathan's head snapped toward the door, his entire body tensing like a wolf scenting danger. "They're getting bold," he muttered, rising smoothly to his feet. He moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. "Pack's bigger tonight. 10, maybe 12. Will they? They're testing, seeing how desperate they need to be before taking on the cabin. The ones I killed last night were probably scouts." He turned from the window, and she saw him calculating, planning. They can smell the horses, smell the boy's sickness. In their world, that means prey. Fear coiled in Eliza's stomach. "What do we do?" "We don't do anything. You stay here with Samuel. Bar the door behind me." He was already reaching for his coat, checking his rifle, strapping on a knife that looked wickedly sharp in the firelight. "You can't go out there alone. Not against a whole pack. Done it before." He slung a quiver of arrows over his shoulder, took up his bow. "Besides, can't let them get comfortable. Give wolves an inch. They'll take your life." "Nathan, please." He paused at the door, looking back at her. "Bar the door. Eliza. No matter what you hear, don't open it unless you hear my voice saying the words, 'Mountain Sage.' Anything else, anyone else, you shoot first and ask questions later. Understand?" She nodded, throat tight with fear, not for herself, but for him. "The rifle above the mantel is loaded? You know how to use it?" "Yes." "Good." He studied her face for a long moment, as if memorizing it. "Take care of the boy." Then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness before she could speak the words crowding her throat. She barred the door with shaking hands, then took down the rifle, checking its load as James had taught her years ago. Samuel whimpered in his sleep. She smoothed his hair, humming a lullaby her mother had sung, trying to ignore the sounds beginning outside, snarls, howls, and then the sharp crack of a rifle. Minutes crawled by like hours. Another shot, then another. A wolf's scream, high and terrible. Cut off abruptly. Then silence, worse somehow than the noise. Eliza gripped the rifle, positioned between Samuel's bed and the door. Her hands were steady now, her fear crystallizing into determination. She would not lose another person to this mountain. Not tonight. A thud against the door made her raise the rifle. Scratching, like claws on wood. A low growl that raised every hair on her neck. "Mama!" Samuel's voice, weak and frightened. "Shh, sweetheart, it's all right. Just some noisy animals outside." More scratching, more insistent. The door was solid, but for how long? Where was Nathan? A howl from directly outside. Then sudden commotion, snarls, the sound of bodies hitting the ground, a man's grunt of pain. Her finger found the trigger. Then, clear through the chaos. "Mountain Sage! Eliza! The door!" She flew to remove the bar. Yanking the door open, Nathan stumbled in, and she slammed it shut behind him, dropping the bar back in place. He leaned against the door, breathing hard, and she saw the dark stain spreading across his shirt. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," but he swayed as he said it, and she caught his arm, guiding him to a chair. "Let me see. The pack can wait. Let me see." He submitted to her ministrations, shrugging out of his coat and shirt. 3 parallel gashes ran across his ribs, claw marks, deep but not fatal if kept clean. She'd seen worse in the mining camps. "Samuel's medicine," she said, "already moving." "The willow bark also works for pain," he finished. "You learn fast." She prepared the draft, then cleaned his wounds with whiskey from a bottle he pointed out. He hissed through his teeth but stayed still under her hands. The wolves? 4 dead. The rest retreated. They'll think twice before coming back. He caught her wrist as she wrapped clean cloth around his ribs. Thank you. You saved our lives. This is the least— No. His thumb stroked across her pulse point. Thank you for opening the door. For trusting the password. Another woman might have panicked, might have— I'm not another woman. No, he agreed, his voice rough. You're not— They stayed frozen like that, her hands on his bare chest, his fingers circling her wrist. The firelight painted his skin gold and shadow, highlighting old scars. A map of violence survived. She could feel his heart beating under her palm, strong and steady despite his injury. Eliza. Her name was a whisper, a prayer, a warning. I know, she whispered back. I know all the reasons this is foolish. You're dangerous. I'm a widow. We barely know each other. I know. Then why? Because I'm tired of being careful. Tired of being proper. Tired of living for everyone's approval except my own. She freed her hand from his grasp, but didn't step away. Because when you look at me, I don't feel like a burden or bad luck or a woman to be pitied. I feel alive. His hand rose to cup her cheek, calloused thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't known had fallen. You don't know what you're saying. The town already treats you poorly. If they knew you'd been here, with me— Let them talk. The fierce words surprised her, but she meant them. They already whisper. At least this would give them something true to gossip about. Eliza. She silenced him by pressing her fingers to his lips. I'm not asking for promises. Nathan, I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking for tonight, for however long this storm keeps us here. Is that so wrong? His eyes searched hers, and she saw the moment his resistance crumbled. He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm that sent fire racing through her veins. You'll be my ruin, he murmured, or your salvation. More likely mine will be yours, she replied, surprising a laugh from him. But before either could act on the promise hanging between them, Samuel coughed, a harsh, rattling sound that had them both turning toward his bed. The moment shattered like thin ice. Eliza rushed to her son, helping him sit up as the coughing fit seized him. Nathan, despite his injury, was there too, preparing another dose of medicine with steady hands. Easy, boy, Nathan soothed. Don't fight it. Let it come up. Samuel's small body shook with the effort, but finally the fit passed. He looked between them with fevered eyes, taking in Nathan's bandaged chest and his mother's flushed face. Did the wolves hurt you? He asked Nathan. Just a scratch. I've had worse from house cats. That earned a weak smile. Mama, are we staying here? Eliza smoothed his hair. Just until you're stronger and the snow clears. Then we'll go home. I don't want to go home. The words were soft but clear. I like it here. It's warm and safe, and Nathan's teaching me things. Samuel. They're mean to you there. Mama, I hear what they say. Here, Nathan's nice to you. You smile here. Out of the mouths of babes. Eliza felt her cheeks burn, couldn't meet Nathan's eyes. Rest now, she told her son. We'll talk about it when you're better. But as Samuel settled back into sleep, his words echoed in the cabin. You smile here. When had she last smiled before coming to this mountain? When had she last felt anything but the grinding weight of survival? Nathan moved away, pulling on a fresh shirt, giving her space. But the air between them remained charged, full of unspoken possibilities and dangerous hopes. Outside, the wolves had gone silent. The storm was passing. Soon the snow would settle, the paths would clear, and she would have to choose. Return to a life of whispers and struggle, or step into the unknown with a man marked by violence but capable of surprising gentleness. The fire crackled, sending sparks up the chimney like wishes ascending to heaven. And Eliza found herself praying, not for safety, not for respectability, but for courage. Courage to reach for what she wanted. Just this once. Courage to let herself be happy. even if only for a stolen moment in a cabin on a mountain, while the wolves howled and the world beyond ceased to matter. The morning dawned crystal clear, the kind of sharp winter day that made the snow sparkle like scattered diamonds. Nathan stood at the edge of the porch, testing the depth of his injured side with careful movements. The bandages held firm. Eliza had done good work. In the stable, the horses nickered softly, eager for their morning feed. "You should be resting," Eliza said from the doorway. She'd braided her hair properly today, tried to smooth the wrinkles from her dress, but there was something different about her, a looseness to her shoulders, a light in her eyes that hadn't been there when she'd arrived. "Work doesn't stop for a few scratches," he replied, though he appreciated her concern. "Besides, we need meat. What I've got stored won't last long with 3 mouths to feed." "Then I'm coming with you." He turned, ready to argue, but the set of her jaw told him it would be useless. "You ever hunted before?" "I can shoot." "Shooting and hunting aren't the same thing." "Then teach me." She stepped closer, and he caught her scent, soap and something uniquely her. "Samuel's sleeping well. The fever's gone. He'll be fine for a few hours, and I need to do something useful. I can't just sit and be tended to like some helpless thing." He understood that need, the desire to contribute rather than simply take. "Get your coat then, and wrap up warm. It's colder than it looks." They set out on snowshoes he'd pulled from his storage, Eliza wobbling at first but quickly finding her rhythm. He led her up a gentle slope through a stand of aspens, their white bark stark against the evergreens. The silence between them was comfortable now, broken only by the crunch of snow and the occasional call of a jay. "Tracks," he said, pointing to a line of delicate prints. "Deer, fresh, maybe an hour old. See how the edges are still sharp?" She knelt to look closer, genuinely interested. "A big one." "Doe, probably. Medium size. The stride's not long enough for a buck." He scanned the tree line. "She's heading for water. There's a spring that doesn't freeze about a quarter mile up. Good place to wait." They made their way carefully, Nathan teaching as they went, how to move quietly, how to stay downwind, how to read the forest's signs. Eliza proved a quick student, naturally graceful once she understood the rhythm of it. At the spring, they settled behind a fallen log, the rifle ready. Nathan showed her how to brace it, how to breathe, how to wait. The sun climbed higher, painting long shadows across the snow. "My father would be horrified," Eliza whispered after a while. "His daughter, hunting like a savage." "Nothing savage about providing food," Nathan replied quietly, more honest than buying meat from a butcher, pretending it didn't come from a living thing. "That's what I like about you," she said, then caught herself. I know what you mean." He kept his eyes on the tree line, but he was acutely aware of her warmth beside him. "You can speak plain with me, Eliza, always." "All right then. I like that you don't pretend things are other than what they are. In town, everyone wears masks, plays roles. The righteous widow, the charitable Christian, the upstanding citizen. But underneath," she shrugged, "underneath they're just as hungry, just as frightened, just as human as anyone." "And you? What's under your mask?" She was quiet so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "Someone who's tired of being proper. Someone who dreams of running wild sometimes. Someone who—" She broke off, pointing. "There!" The doe stepped into the clearing, cautious but unaware of their presence. She was beautiful in the morning light, her coat thick with winter fur, movements delicate as she picked her way to the spring. "You're shot," Nathan whispered. Eliza raised the rifle, sighting as he'd taught her. He watched her breathe, saw the moment of hesitation. "You don't have to," he said. "We can find—" The rifle cracked. The doe dropped clean, dead before she hit the snow. Eliza lowered the gun, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the fallen animal. "Don't be sorry. Be grateful. Her life feeds ours. That's the way of things. What matters is you made it quick, didn't let her suffer." They approached the doe together. Nathan showed Eliza how to thank the animal properly, the way the Shoshone had taught him years ago. She watched him work, Field dressing with practiced efficiency. You learned from Indians. Lived with them for a time. After I left the hunting life, they took me in when most whites would have shot me on sight, taught me about the mountains, about medicine, about seeing the world different. He glanced at her. That bother you? No, though it would scandalize the town even more, the widow consorting with an Indian lover. That what you're doing? Consorting? Color rose in her cheeks, but she met his gaze steady. I don't know what I'm doing. I only know I don't want to stop. They loaded the deer onto a travois Nathan had hidden nearby, working together in easy partnership. On the way back, Eliza spotted rabbit tracks, and Nathan showed her how to set a snare. Her delight when she understood the mechanism made him want to teach her everything he knew, to watch that joy of discovery again and again. Near the cabin, movement caught his eye. He held up a hand, stopping Eliza, his other hand moving to his rifle. What is it? Horses. 3, maybe 4. His voice had gone hard. Dangerous. Stay behind me. They approached cautiously, using the trees for cover. Through the branches, Nathan could see riders in the clearing before his cabin. Rough-looking men, the kind he'd known too well in his former life. No, he's here somewhere. One was saying, smoke's been coming from that chimney for days. Maybe he's got a woman up here. Another laughed. Always did wonder what he was hiding from. Boss wants him found. The first replied. Says Cross knows too much about the old days. Can't have him talking to the wrong people. Eliza's hand found Nathan's arm. He could feel her trembling, but when he looked, her face was set with determination. Not fear. Friends of yours? She whispered. From another life. One that won't stay buried. Seems like the front door's barred. Samuel. We'll be safe. These types don't hurt children if they can help it. Bad for business. He studied the men, calculating. But they'll use him to get to me if they know he's there. So what do we do? He liked that liked it too much. You circle back, come in through the root cellar entrance. I'll draw them off. Nathan, no arguments. Your boy needs you. She nodded, but before she left, she pressed something into his hand. Her husband's revolver, just in case. Then she was gone, moving through the trees with the skill he'd just taught her. Pride and fear warred in his chest as he watched her go. Nathan stepped into the clearing, rifle casual in his hands, but ready. Looking for something. Boys? The men spun, hands dropping to their guns, then freezing when they saw his rifle. Cross. The leader said, Been a long time. Not long enough. McKenna. What's Harrison want? You know what he wants. Insurance. You've got too much history. Know where too many bodies are buried. Literally, in some cases. Nathan agreed pleasantly. But I've kept my mouth shut for 5 years. No reason to change now. Boss don't see it that way. Especially with you cozying up to the Hartley widow. Yeah, we know about that. Nothing happens in these mountains Harrison don't hear about. Nathan's blood ran cold, but he kept his expression neutral. The widow and her boy got caught in the storm. I gave them shelter. They'll be gone soon as the snow clears. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, Harrison wants to talk. You can come easy or hard, but you're coming. I don't think so. McKenna smiled, ugly and confident. 4 of us, 1 of you. And we both know you've gone soft, living up here playing hermit. Soft? Nathan smiled back, and something in it made McKenna's expression falter. Let me show you how soft I've gotten. The clearing exploded into violence. Nathan's rifle spoke first, taking one man in the shoulder, spinning him around. He rolled aside as the others opened fire, their shots chewing splinters from the trees. The revolver was in his hand now, barking sharp counterpoint to the rifle's roar. A bullet tugged at his sleeve. Another whined past his ear, but his shots found their marks. A second man down, clutching his leg. A third backing toward the horses. Firing wild, McKenna had taken cover behind a boulder, shouting orders. The cabin! Check the cabin! Fear for Samuel, for Eliza, gave Nathan fresh strength. He broke from cover. charging across the open ground. McKenna rose to meet him, and they collided like bulls, rolling in the snow, fighting for control of McKenna's gun. A shot muffled between their bodies. McKenna stiffened, eyes wide with surprise, then went limp. Nathan rolled away, McKenna's blood spreading crimson across the white snow. The last man was at the cabin door, pounding on it, shouting. Nathan raised the rifle, then heard a sound that chilled him. The crack of wood splintering. The man had found an axe. "Samuel!" Eliza's scream from inside sent Nathan running. He burst through the door to find chaos. The outlaw had made it inside but was on the ground, Eliza standing over him with a cast-iron skillet. Samuel clutched behind her. The man groaned, trying to rise, and she hit him again with a sound like a bell ringing. "Mama!" Samuel's voice was small, scared. "It's all right, sweetheart. It's all right now." Nathan checked the man, unconscious but breathing. He looked at Eliza, wild-haired and fierce, still gripping the skillet like a weapon, and felt something in his chest crack open. "Nice swing," he managed. "I couldn't let him." She was shaking now, the reaction setting in. "You did perfect, both of you." He knelt by Samuel, checking him over. "You hurt, boy?" "No, sir. Mama protected me. She came through the floor like a ghost and told me to hide under the bed. Then when that man broke in, she was ready." "Your mama's braver than most men I've known," Nathan said, meaning it. He secured the unconscious outlaw, then went to check on the others. 2 dead, including McKenna. 1 fled. 1 wounded but alive. The survivor would carry word back to Harrison. Nathan knew. This wasn't over. When he returned to the cabin, Eliza had made Samuel tea and was trying to clean the blood from her hands. Nathan took the cloth from her, gently washing away the evidence of violence. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I brought this to your door." "No, they brought it to yours." She caught his hands. "Nathan, what they said about Harrison, about the old days, is true, most likely. I did some work for him once, before I knew what he was. Helped track down some men he said had wronged him. Found out later they were just miners trying to organize for better wages." His jaw tightened. "I've got blood on my hands from that. Harrison knows it. He's kept it as insurance, just like McKenna said. And now he knows I'm not as isolated as he thought. Knows about you and Samuel. That makes me dangerous to him." He met her eyes. "I'll understand if you want to leave. Today, I can get you back to town. Make sure you're safe." "Safe?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "In a town owned by Harrison, where everyone despises me, that's not safety. Nathan, that's just a slower death." "Then what?" "Then we stop running," she said fiercely. "Both of us. We stop letting fear and shame drive us into corners. We stand and fight if we have to." "Eliza, no, listen to me." She framed his face with her hands. "You've been hiding up here, punishing yourself for past sins. I've been hiding in that town, accepting their scorn like I deserve it. But what happened today?" "Nathan, I fought for my son. You fought for us. We protected each other. Isn't that worth more than all their judgments?" He covered her hands with his. "You don't know what you're saying. Harrison won't let this go. Neither will the town when they find out. Then we'll face it together, or we'll leave together. But I won't go back to that life. Nathan, not after this, not after seeing what it could be like to have someone who—" She stopped, color flooding her cheeks. "Someone who what?" "Someone who sees me as I am and doesn't turn away." He pulled her against him then, ignoring the protest from his injured ribs. She came willingly, her arms winding around his neck. When their lips met, it was like lightning striking, electric, inevitable, transformative. "Mama?" Samuel's voice broke them apart. The boy stood in the bedroom doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Is the bad man gone?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's gone." Samuel patted over, looking between them with 2 wise eyes. "Are we staying with Nathan now?" Eliza looked at Nathan. Question and hope mingled in her expression. "If you'll have us," Nathan said quietly. "Both of you. It won't be easy. Harrison will come, and when he does, he'll find us ready," Eliza finished. "All of us." Samuel smiled then, the first real smile Nathan had seen from him. "Can I learn to shoot too, to protect Mama? When you're older and stronger," Nathan promised. "For now, your job is to get well. Deal? Deal." The boy held out his small hand, and Nathan shook it solemnly. Outside, the sun was beginning its descent, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. The bodies in the yard would need dealing with, plans would need making. But for this moment, in this cabin, they were safe. They were together. And that, Nathan thought as he watched Eliza tuck Samuel back into bed, her movements sure and graceful, that was worth fighting for. Worth facing down all of Harrison's guns and all of the town's scorn. For the first time in 5 years, Nathan Cross had something to lose. For the first time in 5 years, he had something to live for. The tension in the cabin was thick as morning smoke. Nathan had spent the night on watch, rifle across his knees, while Eliza dozed fitfully in the chair beside Samuel's bed. Every sound from outside, the crack of a branch, the whisper of wind, had them both reaching for weapons. At dawn, Nathan made his decision. "We need to move the bodies before they freeze to the ground, and that one I tied up needs dealing with." "What will you do with him?" "Send him back to Harrison with a message." Nathan's smile was grim. Man like Harrison understands only one language. They worked together in the crisp morning air. Eliza proved steadier than most men Nathan had known, helping him drag the bodies to a ravine where the scavengers would take care of them come spring. The survivor, a young man named Dobbs who couldn't have been more than 20, watched with wide, frightened eyes as Nathan cut his bonds. "You tell Harrison that Nathan Cross is done hiding," Nathan said, his voice carrying the weight of mountains. "Tell him if he wants me. He comes himself. No more sending boys to do a man's work. He'll kill me for failing." Dobbs stammered. "Then you'd best ride fast and far." Nathan handed him a canteen and some jerky. "California's nice this time of year." They watched Dobbs ride away, his horse kicking up snow clouds that glittered in the morning sun. When he disappeared over the ridge, Eliza turned to Nathan. "You think he'll run?" "Maybe, maybe not. Either way, Harrison will get the message." They returned to the cabin to find Samuel attempting to get out of bed, his young face determined despite his weakness. "I want to help," he insisted when Eliza tried to settle him back. "I'm not a baby." "No," Nathan agreed, crouching to the boy's level. "You're not, but a man knows when to rest and when to fight. Right now, your fight is getting strong again." "Can you do that?" Samuel nodded solemnly. "Yes, sir, but when I'm better." "When you're better, I'll teach you everything I know." Nathan ruffled the boy's hair. "Starting with how to read trail signs? Deal?" As Samuel settled back, satisfied with his promise, a sound made all three freeze. Horses, multiple horses. Approaching fast. Nathan grabbed his rifle, pushing Eliza toward the back room. "Take Samuel and—" "Like hell," she interrupted, checking the load on her husband's revolver. "We stand together, remember?" Before he could argue, a voice called from outside. "Cross! Nathan Cross! We come in peace!" Nathan frowned. He knew that voice. "That's Tom Brennan, town marshal. Can we trust him?" "We're about to find out." Nathan moved to the door, calling back. "State your business." "Brennan. Need to talk. It's about Harrison and the widow Hartley. Important news." Nathan and Eliza exchanged glances. She nodded, taking position by the window where she could cover him. Nathan unbarred the door, keeping his rifle ready. Tom Brennan sat his horse in the clearing, hands visible and empty. With him were two other men Nathan recognized. Doc Morrison, who was supposed to be in Denver, and surprisingly, Judge Willard Patterson from the Territorial Court. "Hell of a welcoming committee," Nathan observed. "Hell of a mess you've made," Brennan replied, but there was something like respect in his voice. "Mind if we come in? It's mighty cold, and what we've got to say shouldn't be shouted across a yard." Nathan considered, then nodded. Slowly. And, Tom, you know I'll drop you if this is a trick. No trick. Brennan dismounted carefully. Word of honor. The three men entered the cabin, removing their hats when they saw Eliza. Doc Morrison immediately moved toward Samuel, his medical instincts overriding everything else. May I? He asked Eliza. She glanced at Nathan, then nodded, while the doctor examined Samuel, pronouncing himself impressed with the boy's recovery. Judge Patterson cleared his throat. Mrs. Hartley. Mr. Cross, we've ridden hard from town with news. There's been developments. Spit it out. Nathan growled. Harrison's dead, Brennan said bluntly. Shot last night in his own home. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Eliza asked. Who? That's where it gets interesting. Judge Patterson pulled out a leather folder. You know Mary Two Crows? The Shoshone woman? She told me about Nathan. Eliza said slowly. Well, seems she knew more than trail directions. Her son worked in Harrison's mine years back, died in a collapse. Same one that killed your husband. Mrs. Hartley. She's been gathering evidence ever since. Statements from miners. Records Harrison thought he'd burned. Proof of cut corners and bribed inspectors. She brought it all to me yesterday. The judge continued. Enough to hang Harrison twice over. I was preparing warrants when word came he'd sent men after Crosshair. By the time we organized a posse, Harrison was dead in his study. Mary? Nathan asked. Brennan shrugged. No one saw anything. Harrison had a lot of enemies. Could have been anyone. But you don't think it was just anyone? Eliza said. Mary Two Crows disappeared last night. The judge admitted. Along with all the gold Harrison kept in his safe. Enough to compensate every family who lost men in his mines. With some left over. Nathan felt a smile tugging at his lips. Old woman always was smarter than she let on. The point is, Judge Patterson said, Harrison's reign is over. His operations are being investigated. His men are scattering like rats. Which brings us to you two. What about us? Eliza's chin lifted defiantly. Town knows where you went. Ma'am, they know Crosshair took you in. There's been talk. There's always talk, she said bitterly. True enough, but there's also been shame. This from Doc Morrison, looking up from Samuel. I should have been there. Should have had medicine available for the boy. Others feel the same. Amazing how brave people get when the tyrant's dead. We've come to make an offer. Judge Patterson said, the town needs a new marshal, someone who can't be bought, who knows how to handle the rough elements that'll try to fill Harrison's void. Nathan laughed, sharp and disbelieving. You want me to be marshal? The killer? The hermit? The man who protected a woman and child, Brennan corrected. The man who stood up to Harrison's guns. The man who knows these mountains and the people in them better than anyone. It comes with a house. Doc Morrison added. The old Stewart place. Big enough for a family. Good school nearby for the boy. You're assuming a lot, Eliza said quietly. Are we? The judge looked between them. Seems to me you two have already made your choice. This just makes it official, legal, respectable, even. Nathan felt Eliza's hand slip into his. He looked down at her, saw his own thoughts reflected in her eyes. Safety, belonging, a chance at the life neither had dared dream of. What about the talk? He asked. The widow and the killer, they won't accept it easy. Some won't, Brennan admitted. But more will than you think. Harrison poisoned this town for years. People want a fresh start. Having a marshal who can't be corrupted, who's already proven he'll protect the innocent. That's a powerful symbol. And Doc Morrison added with a slight smile. I might have mentioned to a few gossipy ladies that I'd observed clear signs of long-standing mutual affection between you two. Amazing how quickly scandal becomes romance when properly framed. Samuel, who'd been listening with the sharp ears of children everywhere, piped up. Does this mean we can stay together? Judge Patterson smiled. That's up to your mother and Mr. Cross, son. All eyes turned to them. Nathan felt the weight of decision. But more than that, he felt the warmth of Eliza's hand in his, the trust in Samuel's eyes, the possibility of redemption he'd never thought to find. "We'll need time to discuss," Eliza began. "Yes," Nathan interrupted. "Yes to all of it. Marshall, house, the whole thing." He looked at Eliza. "If you'll have me, both of you." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. "You saved us. In every way a person can be saved. You saved me right back," he said softly. "From the cold. From myself. From a life half-lived." "Well then," Judge Patterson said, clearly uncomfortable with the emotion. "I'll need you to come to town tomorrow for the swearing-in. Mrs. Hartley. We'll need to discuss. That is, if you're planning. There's a minister." "Judge Patterson," Eliza said sweetly. "Are you trying to ask if Nathan and I intend to marry?" The judge flushed. "Well, for propriety's sake." "Then yes," Nathan said, surprising everyone, including himself. "If she'll have me." "Nathan Cross," Eliza said. "Are you proposing to me in front of the territorial judge, the town marshal, and the doctor? Seems like I am. Will you marry me, Eliza? Be my wife. Let me be a father to Samuel. Make an honest man of me at last." "Mama, say yes," Samuel urged, bouncing despite his weakness. "As if I could say anything else," she murmured, then louder. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." The cabin erupted in congratulations. Doc Morrison produced a flask of medicinal whiskey that was passed around. Plans were made, the move to town, the wedding, the new beginnings that suddenly seemed possible. As the visitors prepared to leave, Brennan pulled Nathan aside. "You sure about this? Being marshal won't be easy. Harrison's men aren't all gone, and there'll be those who test you." "I've been tested before," Nathan replied. "Difference is, now I've got something worth fighting for." Brennan nodded. "The widow, Mrs. Hartley, she's good for you. Anyone can see it, and that boy needs a father. I need them more than they need me." Nathan admitted. "Maybe, maybe not. Either way, town's lucky to have you both." Brennan mounted his horse, then looked back. "Oh, and Cross, that business in Bent Creek. Judge Patterson did some investigating. Found witnesses who confirmed your story. The fire was an accident. The deaths were tragic, but not murder. Thought you should know." The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. 5 years of guilt, 5 years of self-exile, and now, absolution? It seemed too much to hope for. After the men left, the cabin felt different, lighter, fuller of possibility. Samuel had fallen asleep again, worn out by excitement. Nathan and Eliza stood on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked. "Life as a marshal's wife won't be easy. There'll be danger, long nights, hard choices. Harder than being a widow in a hostile town? Harder than raising a son alone? Harder than never knowing what it feels like to be loved?" She turned to face him. "Nathan, I've been surviving. With you. I want to live." He kissed her then, long and deep, with all the promise of their future in it. When they broke apart, the stars were beginning to appear, diamonds against velvet. "We'll go down tomorrow," he said. "Face them all together." "Together," she agreed. "Always together." Inside the cabin, Samuel coughed softly in his sleep, then settled. The fire crackled in the hearth, and outside, the mountains stood eternal, witness to endings and beginnings, to love found in the most unexpected places, to second chances seized with both hands. Nathan Cross, killer and hermit, would die with the sunrise. In his place would rise Marshall Cross, husband and father, protector and protected. It was more than he'd ever dared dream. It was exactly what he'd always needed. The wolves howled in the distance, but there was no threat in it now. Just the wild calling to the wild, reminding them that life was fierce and precious and meant to be lived fully, without apology or regret. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight, in a cabin on a mountain, 3 souls had found their home in each other. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The decision to leave the mountain came with the dawn. Nathan packed carefully. His medicines, his books, the few possessions that mattered. Eliza helped, her movements sure and purposeful. while Samuel watched from his bed, still weak but alert. "Will we come back here?" the boy asked. "Sometimes. Nathan promised. This place saved us. We won't forget it." They fashioned a travois for Samuel, padding it thick with furs. The boy protested he could ride, but Nathan was firm. A man protects his strength for when it's truly needed. The secret trail Nathan chose wound down the back of the mountain, avoiding the main road where Harrison's remaining men might linger. It followed an old Shoshone hunting path, barely wide enough for the horses in places, but safer than the exposed roads. "How do you know these paths?" Eliza asked as they navigated a particularly narrow stretch. "Spent a winter with the Shoshone, learning their ways. They showed me routes white men never dream exist." He pointed to marks on trees. "See those blazes? They tell a story if you know how to read them." The journey was slow, careful. Nathan led, constantly scanning for danger, while Eliza brought up the rear, the revolver within easy reach. Between them, Samuel dozed on the travois, lulled by the steady movement. At midday, they stopped by a hidden spring to rest the horses and eat. Nathan had just knelt to fill the water skins when he heard it, the distinctive click of a rifle being cocked. Well, Nathan Cross, caught off his guard at last. Nathan's hand moved toward his gun, but the voice stopped him cold. "I wouldn't. Got 3 rifles on you." From the rocks emerged figures Nathan recognized with sinking heart. The Coulter brothers, Jake, Amos, and Will, Harrison's most vicious enforcers, men who'd once burned out a whole family for refusing to sell their claim. "Heard Harrison was dead," Nathan said evenly, hands visible and still. "He is," Jake Coulter confirmed. "Which means we're out of employment. Figured we'd collect one last bounty, the great Nathan Cross. Harrison always said you knew too much." "That's old business. I've got no quarrel with you boys." "Maybe not, but we've got need of traveling money." Jake's eyes shifted to Eliza. "The pretty widow might fetch a good price down Mexico way. And the boy, well, there's always work for young ones in the mines." Nathan saw Eliza's hand move toward her weapon and gave a tiny shake of his head. 3 rifles. Bad odds even for him. "Let him go," he said. "It's me you want. Noble of you. Cross, but we'll take the whole package." Jake gestured with his rifle. "Everyone nice and easy now. Drop the weapons." Nathan began to comply, mind racing for options, then Samuel's voice, weak but clear, cut through the tension. "Mr. Nathan, is this a bad man like you taught me about?" "Yes, son," Nathan replied carefully. "Then I remember what to do." Before anyone could react, Samuel rolled off the travois, something in his small hands. The sharp crack of firecrackers Nathan had given him as a toy, echoed off the rocks. The horses reared, whinnying in panic. In that instant of chaos, Nathan moved. His rifle came up, firing as he rolled aside. Eliza's revolver spoke twice. The clearing erupted in gunfire and confusion. When the smoke cleared, Jake Coulter lay still. Amos was clutching a bleeding arm, and Will had fled into the forest. Nathan quickly disarmed Amos, who sat cursing and defeated. "Samuel!" Eliza rushed to her son, who had taken shelter behind a boulder as Nathan had taught him. "I did good," the boy asked, pale but proud. "You did perfect," Nathan assured him, ruffling his hair. "Quick thinking, using those firecrackers as a distraction. They bound Amos's wound. Nathan couldn't bring himself to let even an enemy bleed out, and tied him to a tree where he'd be found eventually. Jake's body they left for the scavengers. Will was long gone, likely running still. "We need to move," Nathan said. "Gunfire carries in these mountains." They pushed harder now, urgency driving them. The trail descended through stands of pine and aspen, the snow thinning as they lost altitude. By late afternoon, they could see the smoke of Copper Creek rising in the valley below. Nathan called a halt at a rocky overlook. "We go in openly from here. No skulking. We've nothing to hide." Eliza moved beside him, studying the town that had been her prison for 2 years. It looked smaller from up here. Most things do, from the right perspective. She took his hand. Whatever happens down there, I want you to know, these days with you have been worth any price. Don't talk like we're heading to a funeral, he chided gently. We're going to our new life, remember? But as they descended the final slope, Nathan felt the weight of watching eyes. Word had spread fast by the time they reached the main street. Half the town had gathered to gawk. The crowd parted as they passed, whispers following like smoke. Nathan kept his head high, one hand on his rifle, the other ready to reach for Eliza or Samuel. He caught fragments of conversation. Bold as brass, the both of them. Heard she seduced him with devil's magic. No better than a Jezebel. Harrison's blood on his hands. But there were other voices too. Saved the boy's life. Stood up to Harrison at last. About time someone showed courage. They made it to the marshal's office where Brennan waited, badge in hand. Judge Patterson stood beside him, official and grave. You sure about this cross? Brennan asked one final time. Nathan looked at the crowd, at the mix of hostility and hope on their faces. Then he looked at Eliza, standing straight and proud despite everything. At Samuel, weak but determined. I'm sure. The swearing-in was brief but legal. As Nathan pinned on the badge, someone in the crowd shouted, "Murderer!" Nathan turned to face them, his voice carrying clear and strong. Yes, I've killed men who needed killing, men who threatened innocence, and I'll do it again if this town needs protecting. But I've also saved lives, healed the sick, stood against tyranny. You can judge me for my past or trust me with your future. Your choice. Reverend Mills stepped forward then, surprising everyone. Perhaps we've all been too quick to judge. The Bible speaks of redemption, of stones and glass houses. If Mr. Cross is willing to serve, and Mrs. Hartley has found happiness with him, who are we to stand in the way? She's a widow, Mrs. Pemberton protested. It ain't decent. 2 years of mourning is respectable, Doc Morrison interjected. And considering how her late husband's death has been misrepresented, I'd say Mrs. Hartley has shown remarkable forbearance. The crowd stirred uneasily. The truth about Harrison's negligence was spreading, and with it, shame at how they'd treated one of his victims. Enough debate, Judge Patterson declared. Marshal Cross has been legally appointed Mrs. Hartley is a free woman able to make her own choices. Now, I believe there's mention of a wedding? This caused fresh murmurs. But Reverend Mills nodded. I'll perform the service. Tomorrow, if you wish. Let those who object stay home. That night, they stayed at the boarding house, Samuel between them for propriety's sake. The boy fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the journey. But Nathan and Eliza lay wakeful, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of civilization. Regrets, she whispered in the darkness. None, you? Only that we have to wait until tomorrow. He reached across Samuel to squeeze her hand. Worth doing proper, for the boy's sake. And yours. You deserve a real wedding, not some rushed affair. I'd marry you in that blizzard. Nathan Cross, propriety be damned. The next morning brought fresh snow and unexpected allies. Mary Two Crows appeared at the boarding house, dressed in her finest beadwork. Heard there's a wedding, she said simply. Figured you'd need witnesses. Behind her stood others, miners who'd known the truth about Harrison. Women who'd been helped by Eliza's small kindnesses over the years. Even Tom Brennan in his Sunday best. The ceremony was simple but moving. Samuel stood as Nathan's best man, leaning heavily on a cane but beaming with pride. Mary Two Crows gave Eliza away, murmuring a blessing in Shoshone that brought tears to the bride's eyes. When Reverend Mills pronounced them man and wife, Nathan kissed Eliza with a tenderness that silenced even the harshest gossips. In that moment, past and future merged. The killer redeemed by love, the widow given new life, the boy granted the father he'd never dared hope for. They moved into the Stewart house that afternoon, a solid 2-story structure with room for growth and hope. As Nathan carried Eliza over the threshold, Samuel limping behind, neighbors watched from windows and porches, some with disapproval, Yes, but many with something approaching acceptance. That night, their first as a true family, they sat before their own hearth. Samuel dozed in Nathan's lap, finally safe and warm and home. Eliza leaned against her husband's shoulder, watching the fire dance. "It won't be easy," Nathan said quietly. "There'll be tests. Men who think they can challenge a marshal with my past. Women who'll snub you on the street. Days when—" "Nathan," she interrupted, turning to kiss him. "We survived a blizzard. Wolves and gunmen. We can handle a few gossiping biddies and would-be troublemakers." He smiled then, the expression transforming his weathered features. "When you put it that way." "Besides," she added, settling back against him, "we've got something they don't." "What's that?" "Each other. And that's more powerful than all their prejudice and fear combined." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and clean, covering the old tracks and scars, preparing the ground for spring and new growth. Inside, the Cross family settled into their first night of what would be many, not perfect, perhaps, but real and honest and theirs. The mountain that had brought them together stood silent in the distance, its peaks catching the last light like a benediction, and in the town below, slowly, grudgingly, but inevitably, acceptance began to take root. For in the end, the Wild West respected courage above all, the courage to face danger, to choose love despite the odds, to build something new from the ashes of the old. Nathan Cross and Eliza Hartley had shown that courage in abundance. Their real story was just beginning. Spring came early to Copper Creek that year, melting the snow and revealing the earth beneath, ready for new growth. Nathan had been marshal for 3 months now, and the town was slowly transforming. With Harrison's corrupt influence gone, honest businesses began to flourish. The mine implemented proper safety measures, and families started to walk the streets without fear. In the Stewart house, now the Cross home, morning sunlight streamed through clean windows. Eliza stood at the stove, preparing breakfast, while Samuel sat at the table practicing his letters. The boy had grown stronger, his cheeks filled out, his laughter coming easier each day. "Protect," Samuel spelled out carefully. "Protect, like what Papa Nathan does." The title still made Nathan's heart catch. He'd never imagined being called Papa, never thought he deserved such trust. But Samuel had started using it naturally, and Nathan found himself living up to it more each day. "That's right, son," he said, adjusting his badge. "And what a man protects most is his family." A knock at the door interrupted their morning ritual. Nathan opened it to find Judge Patterson, looking pleased with himself. "Marshal, Mrs. Cross," he greeted. "I bring excellent news. The territorial government has reviewed Harrison's crimes and authorized compensation for all affected families. Mrs. Cross, this includes full restitution for your husband's death, plus interest." He handed Eliza an envelope. Inside was a bank draft for more money than she'd ever seen, enough to ensure Samuel's education, enough for security, enough for dreams. I don't know what to say," she managed. "Say you'll use it well." The judge replied, "Oh, and Nathan, there's talk of establishing a proper sheriff's department for the whole county. Your name keeps coming up." After the judge left, the family sat in stunned silence. Then Samuel piped up. "Does this mean I can have books? Real books like Papa Nathan's?" "All the books you want," Eliza promised, tears in her eyes. That afternoon, Nathan was making his rounds when he noticed a crowd gathered near the church, pushing through. He found Reverend Mills trying to calm an angry group of miners. "What's the trouble?" "Reverend? These men say their wages have been cut, even though the mine's more profitable than ever with the new safety measures." Nathan studied the mine owners, new men from back east who'd bought Harrison's operations, slick-suited and smooth-talking, but with the same greedy eyes. "That true?" Nathan asked them directly. "You cutting wages while claiming profits? That's business, Marshal." One replied dismissively, "Not a legal matter." "Maybe not," Nathan agreed. "But a town's peace depends on fair treatment. These men work hard, risk their lives. They deserve honest pay. And if we disagree, Nathan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then you might find it hard to hire guards, might find supplies delayed, might discover this town has ways of making displeasure known that don't involve breaking any laws. The threat was veiled but clear. The mine owners huddled, whispering furiously. Finally, they announced wages would remain at current levels, even increase slightly for the most dangerous positions. As the crowd dispersed, one old miner grabbed Nathan's hand. "You're different from any lawman we've had. Cross, you actually give a damn." That evening, Nathan returned home to find Eliza teaching neighbor children alongside Samuel. Word of her education had spread, and parents who once shunned her now begged her to help their young ones learn. Mrs. Cross's school. Samuel announced proudly, "Mama's going to teach everyone." Nathan kissed his wife's cheek. "Teacher suits you. Better than widow," she replied softly. "Better than outcast?" A month later, trouble arrived in the form of Bart Morrison, no relation to the doctor, a gunslinger with a reputation for killing lawmen. He rode into town like he owned it, taking up residence in the saloon, making threats about testing the new marshal. He's killed 8 men wearing badges. Tom Brennan warned Nathan. "Fast as lightning and mean as a rattlesnake." "I know his type," Nathan replied calmly. "Let him drink. Let him talk. Men like that always make mistakes." But it was Samuel who precipitated the confrontation. Walking home from Eliza's school session, the boy accidentally bumped into Morrison outside the general store. The gunslinger backhanded him, sending Samuel sprawling. Word reached Nathan within minutes. He found Morrison still at the store, regaling listeners with tales of his exploits. Samuel sat on the steps, lip bleeding but eyes defiant. "You hit my boy," Nathan said quietly. Morrison turned, hand hovering near his gun. "Your boy needs to learn manners, like his papa needs to learn respect." "Samuel," Nathan said without taking his eyes off Morrison, "go to your mother." "But Papa?" "Go!" The boy ran. The street cleared as if by magic. Morrison grinned, showing gold teeth. Finally. Been waiting for this. The great Nathan Cross. Killer turned lawman. "Let's see if you've gone soft playing house." "I haven't pulled on a man in months," Nathan said conversationally. "Been trying to leave that life behind, but you hurt my son. That changes things. Your move, Marshal." Time slowed. Morrison's hand dropped to his gun, fast, faster than any honest man had a right to be. But Nathan had faced dishonest men before. His draw was economy itself. No wasted motion, no flourish. 2 shots cracked almost as one. Morrison staggered, looking down at the spreading red on his chest in surprise. His gun clattered to the dirt, unfired. "How?" he gasped. "You were drawing to kill," Nathan explained as the man fell. "I was drawing to protect. Makes all the difference." As Doc Morrison, the good one, tended to the gunslinger's final moments, the town watched Nathan with new eyes. He'd faced down a killer not for glory or revenge, but for family. For them. That night, Eliza tended the graze on Nathan's arm where Morrison's bullet had passed close. The gunslinger had been fast, just not fast enough. "I was terrified," she admitted. "So was I," Nathan confessed. "Not of dying, of leaving you and Samuel alone again." "You won't," she said firmly. "We won't let you." Summer brought a surprise visitor, a woman named Catherine Morse from San Francisco, elegantly dressed and accompanied by a lawyer. She asked to speak with Nathan privately, but he insisted Eliza stay. "Mr. Cross," she began nervously. "I'm Catherine Daniels now, but 5 years ago I was Catherine Morse of Bent Creek. My daughter died in a fire." "A fire you were involved in." Nathan went very still. Eliza took his hand. "I've come to thank you," Catherine continued, surprising them both. "For years I believed the stories, hated you, but I've learned the truth. My brother, he was one of the robbers you tracked. He set that fire deliberately to cover his escape. You tried to save Anna. Witnesses saw you go back into that burning barn 3 times. She pulled out a daguerreotype. A young girl, smiling. This was her, Anna, 16 and full of life. I want you to have this. To know that her mother doesn't blame you, that she's grateful you tried. Nathan took the picture with shaking hands. 5 years of guilt. And here was absolution from the one person who had the right to give it. She loved horses, Catherine added softly. Always said she'd marry a marshal someday, someone brave who'd protect people. I think she would have liked knowing you became one. After Catherine left, Nathan wept, the first time Eliza had seen him cry. She held him as years of self-hatred finally began to ease. Fall arrived with golden aspens and news that Nathan had been appointed county sheriff. The ceremony was held in the town square, with what seemed like half the territory in attendance. Samuel, fully recovered and brown from summer sun, stood proud as Nathan took his oath. Look at them, Mary Two Crows murmured to Eliza. From sorrow, joy, from loneliness, family, the mountain knew what it was doing, bringing you together. That evening, the Cross family hosted a celebration at their home. The house overflowed with guests, miners, ranchers, townspeople who'd once whispered but now offered friendship. Eliza's school had 20 regular students. Nathan's fair enforcement of law had brought peace and prosperity. Samuel had friends, laughter, a future bright with possibility. As the party wound down, the three of them sat on the porch, watching stars appear over the mountains. Samuel dozed against Nathan's shoulder, worn out from playing. No regrets? Nathan asked Eliza, echoing his question from months before. Only one, she said. What's that? That it took tragedy to bring us together, but then again, she smiled, touching his face. Maybe that's how the best things happen. From the hardest ground grow the strongest trees. Philosophy now. Your teaching is showing. Your influence. Marshall Cross, you've taught me to see deeper meanings. He kissed her then, under the vast Wyoming sky, while their son slept peaceful between them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rustlers to catch, disputes to settle, a community to protect and serve. But tonight, they were simply a family who'd found each other against all odds. The mountain stood silent in the distance, its peaks touched with moonlight. It had seen tragedy and triumph, loss and love. It would see more in the years to come, more children for the Cross family, more lives touched by their courage, more proof that redemption was possible for those brave enough to seize it. In the annals of the Wild West, many tales would be told, but few would match the truth of the widow and the mountain man, who'd saved each other in a blizzard and built something beautiful from the ashes of their pasts. Their love story had become legend, whispered around campfires and told in saloons, inspiring others to believe that no matter how dark the night, dawn would always come. And in Copper Creek, Wyoming, dawn had never looked brighter. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West. I hope this story of love, redemption, and courage touched your heart as much as it did mine while sharing it. Where are you listening from today? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know where in the world these frontier tales are reaching. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel and let me know your thoughts about Eliza and Nathan's journey. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own sunrise.